Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some entitled parents. Our first story today comes to us from Dark909911. A short time does not mean you can go on a cruise. Let's jump right in. It was about 10 years ago when I was married to my second and last wife, now ex-wife. I am a chef and she worked retail. We weren't rich, but we were doing well for ourselves. We each owned our own cars, shared all the money equally because it didn't matter who made more than the other. We were married, so everything was equal. She wanted to take some classes, and instead of working her retail job, she would babysit for extra income, and I was all for it. If that's what made her happy, go for it. After she got settled with her classes, we put out ads for her babysitting side job. I know what she was offering for the price she was asking was much lower than daycares by a lot, but she wasn't in it for the money, she just loves kids. She took on 3 kids, 4-year-old male to an 8-year-old female, the other was a 5-year-old female if I remember correctly. All the kids were good and we had a large fenced-in backyard they could play in with lots of kids' toys, and snacks were provided. Most of the parents were friendly and came in to pick up or drop off their kids. One mother though would come in and just say, "See you later," to her little girl, 5-year-old, and walk away. No kiss, no I love you, nothing. My ex took in kids from 2:30 p.m. when the younger kids would get out of their respective schools, kindergarten or preschool, not sure what it was called, then from 3 p.m. on for the older girl. Things seemed to be going well and my ex was happy. Then one Monday morning, not afternoon like the schedule said, the entitled mother drops her daughter off. My ex was in classes, so she was lucky it was my day off. I said I would watch her until my ex was done, then she would take over. She just shrugged like it was nothing and set a duffel bag just inside the door. I had never been part of this except to talk to the kids and entertain them now and then, so I didn't know the drop-off and pickup procedures. Then, like always, the mother just turned and walked away. When my ex got out of her classes and saw the girl, she asked where her mom or dad was. She said, "Mommy's going away for a few days. She said I'm staying here with you." Immediately, my ex started calling the girl's mother, only for it to go straight to voicemail. She had a listing for another number listed as dad. It went to voicemail as well. So my ex watched all 3 kids like usual, and the parents of the other 2 kids came on time and left. This little girl usually got picked up at 6:30 p.m., but not that day. That time came and went, then 8:30, then it was close to 10 p.m. The entire time my ex was calling these numbers with the same results, nothing but voicemail. By this time, the little girl had fallen asleep and we put her in the spare room. The ex called the police to let them know what was going on, but said we will keep her with us for now until we reach the mother. After many tries to both numbers with no better results, I went onto Facebook and found this woman's profile. I was going to look for a family member or a contact we could call. As soon as the homepage came up, my jaw hit the floor. There was a picture of them on a cruise ship desk as it was leaving port. I called my ex to see, and she was as flabbergasted as I was. Going through her friends list, I saw her mother. I contacted her to let her know what was happening, and someone had to come pick this girl up. We didn't sign up for that. Her mother told us she would be there as soon as she could. After close to 2 hours, the grandmother showed up to collect the little girl, but she wasn't alone. She brought the little girl's father. By the way the girl squealed out, "Daddy," then ran and hugged him, I knew it had been a while since they saw each other. We invited them in for coffee, and the grandmother told us the story. From what she told us, her daughter had taken her daughter and ran off with some rich guy and didn't tell anyone where she was. The guy on the cruise with her was the man she was cheating with and not her husband. The father had called the police from our place and had them come there for proof of abandonment by the mother. I showed the officer the Facebook photo dated just the night before. He got the father and grandmother to go with him to the police station to fill out the paperwork, but took our statements at our house. We signed them and they were gone. We never heard from the mother for the next 3 weeks and thought it was odd she wouldn't call to go nuclear on us. Then, a couple of days later, we had an excited banging on the front door. When I opened it, I saw the father beaming with joy, holding his daughter's hand. I invited them in, and he filled us in on the juicy details. She made big money, and he was a stay-at-home dad. In the last year, she had been distancing herself from him. When he confronted her, she said he was delusional. Later on, he drove to the store to pick up some odds and ends, but when he got home, she and his daughter were gone. All there was a note saying goodbye, and he will never see either of them again, and the police seemed useless. She started an affair while they were still together around the same time she started acting different, but he didn't clue in. After she ran off, he took the note to her mother, who did everything she could to help, but her daughter was ignoring her too. She even hired someone to find her. It was just by chance we found them, and they couldn't believe their luck. The father said the mother got some major and some minor charges. Number 1, child abduction. Number 2, child endangerment. Number 3, child abandonment. 4, possession of a controlled substance. 5, resisting arrest. 6, vehicle theft. I guess she rented a car at one airport and never left the keys with it, nor told anyone where she parked it because she wasn't answering her calls or texts. The reason for this? They left the phones at home so they wouldn't get bothered on the trip. I don't remember all the charges, and I may have gotten one or more of those ones wrong too, but the father said he now has 100% custody of his daughter. The mother got in the area of 16 years in total. She was also ordered by the court to have zero contact indefinitely or until she finishes her jail time and extensive therapy. The father was also awarded the house and all assets because he didn't have an income or way to support his daughter. The company the mother worked for also cashed out all stocks or whatever they were and gave the money to them as well, even though they were not responsible for doing that, just helping out. The other man she went on the cruise with owned a smallish company with his wife. When this all came out, she started proceedings for a divorce, and since the company was started by her family and he didn't buy into it, it all went to her. She was also taking him to court for more things too. In the end, he had nothing and she had it all. He wasn't charged with any of the wrongdoings because he wasn't there to drop the little girl off. My ex was sad to be losing such a sweet little girl, but they stayed in contact. As far as I know, they're still in contact. The dad got a job with the kitchen I work in as a server. I didn't get him the job, he did that all himself. I only put in a good word with my boss. I am long gone from that place, but he is now a co-owner and still goes in every day and serves tables. All tips he normally would make, he gives to the busboys and girls and hosts and hostesses because they are part-time high school kids who wouldn't get tips. I hope her cruise was worth it. It seems like in this case, the only reason that the mother took the child from the father was because it was something they could hold over the father. They didn't really want the child, but they knew that having the child with them would make the father extremely upset. It's sad when you think that children don't get to pick their parents because some people definitely don't deserve to be one. I'm just glad this child ended up back with her father again, and it sounds like things are gonna go well. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from ULFR. I told you there was one rule. Let's jump right in. Trigger warning, in the course of this story, I went to the restroom in my backyard. I had what I felt was a good reason to, and precisely no one would have seen me doing so if they weren't an entitled twerp. This story begins with myself and my dog in the backyard, to which we'd been banished because the inside of my house was being painted. Dogs and wet paint are a thing that do not mix well at all, and bath time for my pupper is akin to all-out war. I would say the nuclear option, but that's reserved for when he must don the cone of shame. While we were outside killing time, waiting for the house to be dog safe again, I discovered I very much had to go to the bathroom. And since my backyard is pretty well secluded and only visible really from above or by someone who's way up into my yard, I decided to go then and there. After the sigh of satisfaction and before the stream had finished, I heard a very high-pitched whining sound, and when I looked up to see what the sound was, I saw a quad-rotor drone floating above my backyard, presumably watching me. I don't really have a shy bladder, so I finished what I was doing, put myself away, and went back to my regularly scheduled dog entertainment programming. Later that day after dinner, there was a knock on my door, and upon opening it, I saw a very uncomfortable looking police officer. He asked if I could step outside to speak with him, and I did so. He then asked me if I'd urinated in my yard recently, and when I raised an eyebrow and sort of looked at him like, seriously? He clarified that someone had called in and reported me for doing so, and the report has to be investigated since I live so close to a school. Close as the crow flies, there's a patch of swamp between my house and the school that is not easily navigable. With a car, it's closer to a mile to actually get there. I confirmed that I had and showed the officer where I'd done so, and then told him that the only people that had seen me was my dog and someone flying a drone over my backyard. And I was reasonably sure my dog hadn't phoned the police on me. The officer thanked me for my explanation and said I very likely was not in trouble, but he would take it as a favor if I just used the toilet for the time being. The next day, my dog was in the dog run by himself, sun worshipping while I was working. I had the door open in case he started barking at the neighbors or what have you. Suddenly, he looses his fiercest war cry and starts making distress noises. I look outside to see what's going on, and there's a quad rotor buzzing around my dog run, tormenting my poor dog. I do what anyone should do in that situation and grab my hose, set the nozzle to anti-aircraft, high-pressure jet for the uninitiated, and zap the drone with the hose. Drone ceases operation and falls to the ground in my dog run. It had been chewed on a little bit before I reclaimed the thing, but it seemed fine. I took my dog and the drone inside and figured I'd hear from someone sooner or later. About an hour later, my doorbell rings and there's a 12 or 13-year-old kid on my steps with a bike helmet on and his bike thrown into my garden. I ask if I can help him and he demands I return his drone. I ask him why I should when all he's done with it, in my experience, is harass me. He starts foot stomping and throwing a shrieking tantrum. My cousin, who is 7, had grown out of throwing many moons ago, demanding I give the drone back now. He actually concluded with, "And that's final." I found that frankly adorable and started laughing. I told him to come back with a parent if he wanted the drone back, because he's not capable of acting like a grown-up for this conversation, and went back into my house. The kid actually tried and failed to destroy some of my garden before picking his bike back up and going home. Around 6 that evening, there's another knock at the door, and the kid's back with a man who's a little bit older than I am. I think he knew his kid was full of it because he sheepishly asked me if I'd robbed his son and stolen his drone. I smirked a little bit at this and told him exactly what his son had done with that drone and how it happened to come into my possession. His face couldn't decide between chagrin and fury, and he turns and asks his son if this is really what happened. His son just starts bawling because he knows he's caught. And the dad says, "When I bought you that drone, I said there was one rule. You don't bother people with the drone." The dad apologizes on his son's behalf and says I can keep it. The kid emits a squawk of indignation and fury and says, "I'm telling mom." There's a bit of a scuffle between them while dad wrangles the kid back into the vehicle they arrived in, and then dad comes back and gives me his cell number with instructions to text him if his ex-wife should darken my doorstep. I said I would and waved goodbye, mostly to needle the kid because the twerp had it coming. A few days later around lunchtime, I heard an ominous bang sound, followed shortly after by pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. As I got closer to the door, I could hear high-pitched shrieking, and I connected some dots. Before opening the door, I found the drone dad contact in my phone and texted, "I think she's here." Then I opened my door and was greeted with the sight of an extremely irate, slightly younger than usual Karen. When the woman sees me, she starts screaming at me for stealing from her precious boy, and how I am just the worst human being to grace the face of the earth in her estimation. She's got quite the head of steam worked up, and I can see almost immediately that I'm not allowed to talk. So I decide to pour gasoline on this fire and send a follow-up text, "I can see why you got a divorce." Right when I hit send, this woman slaps the phone out of my hand and onto the ground and demands I look at her while she's talking to me. I go for a non sequitur and say, "At me?" This startles the Karen long enough for me to clarify. Talking at me? This isn't a conversation. It's worth noting that it was about 12:30 p.m. and this woman had Merlot breath so strong I felt like I was getting a buzz just being yelled at by her. She lets out a squawk and starts to puff up like a blowfish, readying another verbal salvo when I hold up a finger, stoop to grab my phone, and then speed dial the police non-emergency line on my phone, because it's pretty obvious how this is going to go. When she demands to know who I'm calling, I tell her calmly that I'm calling the police. Her response was, and this is a direct quote, "Effing good. Let's see how the pigs deal with a mosquito-dicked weasel like you who steals from children." The operator actually heard that, and bless this woman's heart, she actually said, "I think I understand the nature of your call. Can you give me the address where this is happening?" I did, and the operator thanked me and said a response was on the way. While I was talking to the operator, I got a reply from the dad. Oh God, tell me she's not drunk. Deciding I didn't need my phone slapped out of my hand again, I just sent a thumbs down reply to the text and settled in to get yelled at incoherently until backup arrived. It wasn't all that long in coming, maybe 5 minutes total before the boys in blue showed up. It wasn't until they pulled up that I noticed this woman had missed my driveway and actually winged my mailbox pulling up onto my lawn. The police separate us, and I actually wind up talking to the cop who urged me to use the toilet like a civilized human being. I tell my side of the story, and then the officer I was talking to goes to assist the other officer who was trying to figure out what Karen was going on about because she's getting steadily more belligerent and violent. She winds up slapping one cop and trying to bite the other before she's restrained and bundled into the back of one of the cruisers. At this point, the dad has pulled up and looks completely aghast, but he does confirm my side of the story with the police. The officers thank me and the dad for our time and promise a tow truck is coming for the woman's vehicle, and they put their heads together and do police things. And the dad leaves to go and do whatever it was he was doing before Karen reared her ugly head. I did get the last laugh though. While the police were filling out forms or whatever it is police do after a horror show like this, I zipped into my house and grabbed the slightly chewed and no longer damp drone. Making sure Karen was watching, I sauntered over to my trash cans and tipped the piece of junk in and dusted my hands off before walking back inside. I'd already confirmed the drone was dead from getting hosed. I was going to throw it out either way. This just made me happy. So let's see, she drove drunk to OP's house, she assaulted OP in his own home, and then assaulted not one, but 2 police officers? Yeah, that's pretty smart. Enjoy your time in jail, Karen. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.